Isabella Carter awoke to the soft, golden light filtering through her bedroom curtains, the morning of her wedding finally here. Her heart fluttered with a mixture of joy, excitement, and an undercurrent of nervous tension. 7 months pregnant, she felt the gentle movement of her baby against her belly, a sweet reminder of the life growing inside her and the love she hoped would define her future. She had dreamed of this day for months, the elegant ceremony, the family gathered, the vows spoken under a bright sky. She envisioned Ethan Blake standing at the altar, eyes filled with love and pride, and herself glowing with happiness and anticipation. As she prepared for the day, brushing her hair and adjusting the soft, flowing fabric of her maternity gown, she couldn't help but notice Ethan's strange behavior. He had called her repeatedly the night before, his messages short and hurried, and she noticed his phone lighting up with notifications he quickly silenced. There was a tension in the way he moved, a slight hesitation when they spoke about the wedding plans. Isabella told herself it was just nerves, that the groom's jitters were natural, but a small knot of unease formed in her stomach. Her intuition whispered that something was off, though she tried to dismiss it in favor of excitement and love. Even as she smiled at the mirror, imagining the perfect day ahead, her mind couldn't shake the feeling that shadows of betrayal lingered just out of sight. The mix of joy and unease left her fragile yet hopeful, ready to walk down the aisle believing in the man she loved, even as uncertainty tugged quietly at her heart. By mid-morning, the estate buzzed with activity as family and friends arrived, their laughter and greetings filling the air. The garden, decorated with delicate flowers and twinkling fairy lights, exuded a festive charm, and Isabella felt herself momentarily enveloped in warmth and celebration. Yet, amidst the cheer, Ethan's demeanor grew increasingly uneasy. His eyes darted to his phone, his hand brushing nervously against the lapel of his suit, and whispered comments between his groomsmen hinted at tension she couldn't yet understand. The contrast between the jubilant celebration and the subtle signs of conflict created a taut atmosphere, leaving Isabella caught between bliss and an unspoken worry that something in this perfect day might already be unraveling. Ethan Blake stood in the quiet corner of the bridal suite, his phone buzzing insistently in his pocket. Moments before the ceremony, he stepped aside, glancing at the screen with a mixture of urgency and guilt. It was Clarissa, the woman he had been seeing in secret for months. Her message was blunt, demanding, and full of expectation. Ethan's pulse quickened, a surge of adrenaline and desire clouding his judgment. In his mind, he began rationalizing the unthinkable, convincing himself that leaving Isabella for Clarissa was justified. He whispered to himself that his feelings for Clarissa were stronger, that Isabella, despite carrying his child, could never fully understand him the way she did. Back in the main room, Isabella adjusted her veil and smiled nervously at the reflection in the mirror. She caught the flicker of distraction in Ethan's eyes as he moved past her briefly, his gaze darting toward his phone. Her heart sank slightly, but she attributed it to pre-wedding nerves. Still, the unease she had sensed earlier returned in full force, a whisper of intuition she couldn't ignore. She noticed his hesitation, the faint furrow of his brow, the tension in his shoulders, and a cold pang of fear threaded through her excitement. The emotional tension in the room was almost tangible, like the calm before a storm. Guests began to gather outside, their laughter and chatter spilling through the hallways. Isabella took a deep breath, smoothing the front of her gown, trying to steady her nerves. She moved toward the aisle, radiant and hopeful, her hand gently resting on her belly. The sunlight caught her hair, and the soft rustle of her dress added a quiet elegance to the scene. As Ethan appeared at the altar, his hesitation became more noticeable. He offered a faint, strained smile that didn't reach his eyes, and small gestures, a skipped glance, a delayed response, foreshadowed the impending heartbreak. Guests admired the picturesque moment, oblivious to the emotional tension building beneath the surface. The stage was set for a wedding that would be remembered not for joy, but for betrayal. Isabella took a steadying breath as she began her walk down the aisle, the soft fabric of her gown brushing against the floor. Her heart swelled with love for the life growing inside her, the tiny kicks reminding her of the family she believed she was about to fully embrace. The garden was bathed in sunlight, flowers in full bloom, and friends and family watched with admiration, unaware of the storm brewing just beneath the surface. Ethan stood at the altar, trying to project calm, but his hesitation betrayed him. His smile was thin and forced, and his eyes occasionally darted toward the edge of the crowd where Clarissa's presence lingered in his mind. Every subtle gesture, his fidgeting hands, the shallow breaths, the quick glances at his phone, added layers of tension that Isabella, despite her excitement, could sense. As she neared the altar, the whispers of guests mingled with the soft rustle of leaves and the occasional chirp of birds. Every step she took was filled with hope and anticipation, yet small details, the tightness in Ethan's jaw, the slight pause in his greeting, the way he avoided her gaze, foreshadowed a dramatic turn of events. The beauty of the ceremony contrasted sharply with the undercurrent of deception, creating a delicate balance between joy and unease. Isabella's radiant smile masked a flicker of doubt, her maternal instincts whispering that something was not as it seemed. The moment was almost cinematic in its perfection, yet the first cracks in the fairy tale were beginning to show. Every guest admired the scene, captivated by the elegance, unaware that behind the smiles and the flowers, a betrayal was quietly waiting to shatter the illusion of happiness. The ceremony reached its pivotal moment as Isabella stood at the altar, radiant in her flowing gown, hands gently resting on her pregnant belly. Guests watched expectantly, holding their breath as the officiant prepared to speak the final vows. Ethan Blake stepped forward, his expression unreadable. For a brief, terrifying moment, Isabella thought he would smile, hold her hands, and finally commit to the life they had envisioned. Instead, Ethan cleared his throat and muttered a strained apology, his eyes flicking nervously toward the edge of the aisle. Before anyone could fully comprehend his intentions, he turned abruptly, leaving Isabella standing alone in front of the entire gathering. The stunned silence that followed was almost deafening. Gasps erupted, whispers swept through the guests, and shock painted every face as they realized the magnitude of his betrayal. Clarissa appeared at that very moment, striding confidently toward the altar, her presence brazen and deliberate. She stood by Ethan's side, smirking faintly as if she had rehearsed this moment countless times. The guests' shock shifted to murmurs of outrage and disbelief. Isabella's heart felt as if it had stopped, her body trembling, her mind reeling. The humiliation cut deep, sharper than any words could describe. She was abandoned on what was supposed to be the happiest day of her life, and the cruel twist was compounded by the knowledge that she carried Ethan's child. Every glance, every whispered comment, felt like a dagger. Isabella's hope, once bright and unwavering, seemed to vanish in an instant, replaced by a whirlwind of fear, anger, and heartbreak. In the span of a heartbeat, her dream wedding had turned into a scene of betrayal, the perfect image of joy shattered into humiliation and despair. Overwhelmed by the shock and betrayal, Isabella's knees buckled. She felt the floor beneath her and the weight of her pregnancy pressing heavily, as if the world itself had conspired to crush her. Her hands instinctively covered her belly, her tears streaming freely as she struggled to catch her breath. The vibrant ceremony and smiling guests faded into a blur, leaving only the raw sting of abandonment. Family members rushed forward, concern etched deeply on their faces. They helped her to a nearby chair, murmuring soothing words, offering gentle touches to anchor her in the present. Friends clustered around, their eyes wide with disbelief, voices soft but urgent, guiding her through the immediate storm of emotion. Sophia, Isabella's closest friend, knelt beside her, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Isabella, look at me," she said softly, her voice steady and warm. "You're strong. You will get through this. No one can take away your dignity or your strength. Breathe. Focus on your baby, on yourself. You are not alone." Isabella nodded, clinging to Sophia's words like a lifeline. Though her heart ached, a quiet determination began to form beneath the pain. Her vulnerability was raw, but it revealed an inner resilience. In that moment of despair, she understood that this humiliation would not define her. It would ignite the resolve she would need to confront betrayal, reclaim her life, and protect the family growing within her. Amid the stunned silence, the soft click of shoes on the marble floor announced the arrival of Nathan Reynolds, a respected lawyer and longtime family friend. His expression was calm but firm, eyes scanning the scene as he quickly assessed the gravity of the situation. Without hesitation, he approached Isabella, offering a reassuring nod before turning his attention to Ethan and Clarissa. Nathan's voice carried authority as he addressed the room. "There are certain legal agreements that must be acknowledged," he began, drawing Ethan's immediate attention. With a subtle gesture, he produced a set of documents from his briefcase, Ethan's prenuptial contract and related property agreements. The room quieted further, the weight of anticipation heavy in the air. He explained clearly that Ethan had overlooked specific clauses granting Isabella considerable rights in the event of abandonment or breach of marital obligations. The implications were severe. Public embarrassment was only the beginning. Ethan could face financial penalties, potential loss of assets, and legal exposure far beyond what he had anticipated. Nathan's calm delivery contrasted sharply with the growing panic in Ethan's eyes. Isabella listened intently, her heart still aching but now tempered by a growing sense of empowerment. Each word Nathan spoke shifted the balance of power. The betrayal that had left her vulnerable minutes ago now held the potential for retribution, justice, and reclaiming control. Clarissa's confident smirk faltered slightly as she realized that her schemes had underestimated both Isabella's support system and the law's power. Suspense thickened in the room, and Isabella felt a glimmer of hope that the humiliation inflicted upon her would soon be mirrored in consequences for her betrayers. Guests and family gathered closer, drawn by Nathan's authoritative presence and the unfolding revelations. The murmurs of surprise and disbelief rippled through the crowd as he outlined the legal clauses and their implications for Ethan. The room, once filled with silent shock at the wedding day betrayal, now vibrated with tension as the reality of potential consequences settled in. Ethan's composure cracked under Nathan's words. His face flushed, hands trembled, and he stumbled over his attempts to justify his actions. The panic was unmistakable. He had underestimated both Isabella's preparedness and the legal safeguards protecting her. Clarissa, sensing the shift, tried to interject, attempting to manipulate the narrative, but Nathan's calm and precise explanations left no room for her lies. Her facade of control shattered before the assembled guests, leaving her exposed and vulnerable. Isabella remained composed, standing tall despite her heartbreak. Every word Nathan spoke reinforced her dignity and highlighted the recklessness of Ethan and Clarissa. Whispers turned to visible gasps as the audience absorbed the scandalous truth, the social and legal ramifications becoming clear. What was intended as a day of humiliation for Isabella was now reversing. Her betrayers were the ones on the verge of disgrace. The scene became electric with suspense, the ceremony forgotten as the public confrontation transformed into a courtroom-like moment of accountability. Isabella's strength, Nathan's intervention, and the exposure of deceit signaled the beginning of justice, and the complete unraveling of Ethan and Clarissa's carefully constructed image. Isabella's mind spun as the weight of the morning's events pressed down on her. The shock of Ethan abandoning her at the altar, the humiliation in front of family and friends, and the sudden revelation of the legal protections Nathan had uncovered, all collided in a storm of emotions. Her heart ached for the betrayal, for the dreams she had nurtured of a loving marriage and a peaceful family. Yet beneath the heartbreak, a spark of empowerment began to grow. She realized that, for the first time that day, she held power over the situation in a way Ethan and Clarissa never anticipated. Her internal dialogue was a mixture of grief and resolve. How could he do this? How could he choose her over me? She thought, feeling the sting of their unborn child's vulnerability. But then another thought surfaced, steadier, stronger. I am not helpless. I am protected. I have rights, and I will not be silenced. That realization transformed her pain into a quiet but fierce strength, her composure returning with each heartbeat. Meanwhile, Ethan's panic was palpable. His confident facade crumbled, his mind racing to calculate damage control. Clarissa, too, felt her arrogance waver as the reality of exposure and social humiliation began to dawn on her. The very power she had sought to claim through deceit and manipulation slipped through her fingers, leaving her unsettled and vulnerable. Isabella's tears softened, replaced by a steady gaze. She no longer felt entirely like a victim. The humiliation had been sharp and public, but the empowerment that surged within her was sharper. The emotional turmoil had begun to transform into clarity, determination, and the first inklings of triumph over those who sought to destroy her happiness. Nathan Reynolds' voice cut through the tension like a scalpel, precise and authoritative. He detailed the legal ramifications of Ethan's actions with clarity that left no room for argument. "Ethan Blake," he began, addressing the room and the stunned groom, "you have violated clauses in your prenuptial agreement. Your actions today, abandoning your pregnant fiancée and attempting to bring another woman in your place, have serious legal consequences." Isabella listened intently as Nathan outlined the severity: substantial financial loss, forfeiture of shared property rights, and the potential for public censure. Ethan's eyes widened with disbelief, his confident mask shattered. He had underestimated the clauses, the enforceability of the contracts, and the fact that Isabella was prepared, legally and emotionally, to assert her rights. Clarissa's attempts to interject and control the narrative were thwarted at every turn. Nathan's calm, meticulous explanations exposed her complicity, leaving her socially humiliated in front of all the guests. Every attempt at manipulation only reinforced her exposure, eroding the confidence she had flaunted so brazenly earlier. Isabella felt a surge of satisfaction and empowerment as the tension in the room thickened. She now possessed leverage, not just over Ethan but over Clarissa, who had thought herself untouchable. The legal strategy Nathan presented ensured that justice was no longer abstract, it was immediate, tangible, and public. Whispers rippled through the gathering, eyes widening as the consequences crystallized before them. For the first time that day, the power dynamic had shifted completely. Ethan and Clarissa, who had sought to humiliate and dominate, were now exposed, vulnerable, and facing the very repercussions they had ignored. Justice, both legal and social, was taking shape, and Isabella stood at the center, dignified, unyielding, and quietly triumphant. Ethan Blake, now fully aware of the legal and social trap he had walked into, sought a private moment with Isabella. He caught her just outside the ceremony hall, the soft light of the afternoon highlighting her calm, composed demeanor. "Isabella, please. I can explain," he stammered, his voice trembling. His usual confidence was gone, replaced by panic and a frantic awareness of the consequences closing in. Isabella met his gaze steadily, her eyes reflecting neither fear nor anger, but a quiet, unwavering strength. "Ethan," she said calmly, "there is nothing left to explain. You made your choice." His face paled as he realized that no amount of pleading, no excuses, could undo the humiliation and the legal ramifications Nathan had already laid out. He reached out, desperate, his hands shaking. "I never meant for this to happen. Please, Isabella, we can work this out." She shook her head gently, placing a protective hand over her belly. "You should have thought of that before betraying me, before abandoning the woman carrying your child in front of everyone." The stark contrast between Ethan's desperation and Isabella's composure was unmistakable. Panic clouded his judgment, remorse weighed heavily on him, but it was too little, too late. Every plea he made only reinforced the control Isabella now held. She stood tall, unshaken, a portrait of dignity and strength, while Ethan confronted the full scale of emotional and financial ruin his arrogance and betrayal had wrought. Clarissa's confident facade began to crumble as Nathan meticulously revealed her complicity in Ethan's betrayal. The once bold mistress now found herself exposed in front of the wedding guests, family, and friends. Whispers and sideways glances cut through the air like knives, each one magnifying her social downfall. Her attempts to spin the situation and claim innocence fell flat under the weight of Nathan's explanations. Invitations were rescinded, connections faltered, and her professional reputation took a visible hit as the scandal spread quickly through social circles. She realized, too late, that arrogance and deceit carried consequences she had never anticipated. Meanwhile, Isabella remained composed, standing with a quiet elegance that drew admiration from all present. She watched the unraveling of Clarissa's schemes with a measured calm, her dignity intact. Every faltering attempt Clarissa made to assert control only highlighted Isabella's strength and resilience. In that moment, the power dynamics had shifted entirely, leaving the betrayer humbled and the wronged bride firmly in command of her own narrative. In the quiet aftermath of the wedding disaster, Isabella found solace in the presence of her family and closest friends. Her mother, Margaret, held her hand tightly, whispering words of comfort and reassurance, while Sophia, her best friend, stayed close, offering a steadying presence and practical support. Their combined care reminded Isabella that she was not alone, that love and loyalty still surrounded her even when betrayal had struck so publicly. Sitting together in a secluded corner of the garden, Isabella allowed herself to breathe, to let the tears fall freely for the first time. Yet, amid the grief and humiliation, a sense of empowerment began to emerge. She reflected on the choices she had made, carrying Ethan's child, walking toward the altar with hope, and realized that none of that diminished her worth. Her resilience, her dignity, and her ability to confront betrayal head-on were sources of strength far greater than any superficial happiness she had lost. As she assessed her pregnancy, her life, and her future, Isabella made quiet but firm resolutions. She would protect her unborn child at all costs, rebuild her life on her own terms, and refuse to let betrayal define her. Support from those who truly cared reinforced this determination, reminding her that empowerment often rises from the ashes of humiliation. She felt ready to take control, embracing the themes of self-respect, resilience, and the unwavering strength of a woman who refuses to be broken. Weeks passed, and Isabella began to reclaim her life with calm assurance. Her home was filled with warmth, laughter, and preparation for the arrival of her child. Each day, she moved with purpose, balancing her pregnancy with careful planning for her future, ensuring that she would enter motherhood strong, secure, and confident. Meanwhile, Ethan and Clarissa faced the consequences of their actions. Legal obligations, social condemnation, and personal shame loomed over them, a constant reminder of their recklessness and betrayal. The public exposure of their deeds had shifted the balance irrevocably, leaving Isabella in a position of empowerment rather than victimhood. As she arranged the nursery, selected baby clothes, and prepared for the challenges of motherhood, Isabella reflected on the lessons of the past. She had been abandoned and humiliated, yet she had risen above it with dignity and intelligence. Her life now symbolized hope, stability, and a hard-won sense of independence. Every small task she completed, every decision she made, reinforced her newfound strength and the knowledge that she could thrive without relying on those who